Second Page Podcast, episode 34, The Summit of All Fears. This week, Joe and Steve will be bringing to you a free-flowing conversation, a little discussion. As you may have noticed from previous episodes, we were topic by topic, trying to discuss articles of the week. But now that we're in the summer, a little bit of malaise, we're going to be having some nice discussions. We do hope anybody that's watching will comment live. Feel free to participate as much as you'd like. We'll try to read as many of your comments live as we can. So, as always, I'm Joe Oswald. With me behind the big desk, our producer, Mr. Steve Johnson. How you feeling over there, Steve?
Yes, the man behind the RSquared network. And you may not know this, but we're also simultaneously live streaming on YouTube.
We are officially simulcast. Yeah, simulcast. So, yes, anybody that's watching now, just also know that we are live streaming on YouTube as well. Please tell your friends.
And if this all goes crashing and burning, it's Joe's fault.
Yes, we'll just blame it on the guy with the Hispanic-sounding name.
Yes.
All right, so this week the president has been on several trips abroad. Not an actual woman.
Are you sure?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Melania was only there for a couple moments. But this week the president's been on a lot of foreign trips, meeting with both allies and seeming adversaries. The president has maintained the cameras and all eyes on him yet again. While the messages are mixed,
Tupac style.
It kind of, yeah, exactly. While the messages are mixed, as always, it would seem that after almost 2 years of Trump, that the American people and those all around the world, expats, if you call them, people we do business with, we trade and try to remain friendly with.
What does expat stand for?
Expatriate. Expatriate.
Yeah. Does that mean like
you've left your home country to live in another country? Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think they're finally starting to realize, or at least come to terms with the kind of president that Trump is. Between the diplomatic faux pas and the incredulous, ill-advised meetings with the president of Russia, the American press and the people have a lot to think about. Perhaps November will not go down a seemingly predictable course that we seem to have been on for many months. It will take a lot of time, effort, community to right the sails and find our moral guiding star. So, everybody that is listening today, feel free to talk about most of, I think our conversation will be mostly on the foreign trips, some of the midterm elections coming up, and where we generally are as a country again. So I guess we can just start the conversation off by just talking about Trump going abroad the past week or so, visiting our NATO allies in Brussels, where the NATO headquarters are.
Hey, Courtney's watching us.
Hey, Courtney, thank you. So the NATO
kind of shitting the bed everywhere you went.
Oh, pretty well. I don't know. I don't think he sleeps much enough to find a bed to shit in.
I didn't say he slept. I said shit.
He just goes to people's beds and poops in them.
That shits in urinals.
Oh yeah, he did the number 2 in the Dookie urinal. That's a South Park episode, not a Second Page episode. But
it could be.
He basically arrives in England for what amounts to a state visit, but is not considered an official state visit in England, met by tens of thousands of people protesting in the streets of London. So Trump obviously decides to ignore that and goes outside the city limits to meet, I believe, at Buckinghamshire, England, which that's a fun name, to meet with Theresa May, the Prime Minister, and Queen Elizabeth II.
To be fair, though, Theresa May knew the protests were coming, and so she sort of orchestrated.
Everybody knew the protests were coming. I mean, that's the whole point of the protest, where it was very public and everybody knew that it was going to happen. So, I mean, Trump goes over there and says, there's a lot of people that like me. They love me over there. They love me over there. And then follows that up with saying, oh, man, they work so hard to make me feel uncomfortable. I'm just not going to go. So he didn't go to London. He visited the Queen, had tea with her, and she very much did not seem like she wanted him to be there. I broke a lot of royal protocols that leaders from all over the world have followed, including don't walk in front of the Queen, don't leave her behind, don't make her wait 15 minutes in a heat wave for a 92-year-old woman. Has been through a lot. She's seen the rise and fall of empires, of nations, of authoritarian dictators, of economies. She's been through countless wars, and she was made to wait for this buffoon masquerading as a president and world leader. Not to mention that he was 30 minutes late for the working meeting at the NATO summit, after going to this meeting, embarrassing himself and our country, embarrassing our allies and making them very uncomfortable, holds a solo press conference without telling them that he's doing it, has reporters rush to this room because they think that he's going to announce that we're withdrawing from NATO, and he goes to say that the alliance is stronger than ever, and that he, not the previous administration or years of work and negotiations, but he himself got NATO allies to double their contribution limits, which not one member, including France, who's pretty much the only sort of guy friend Trump has in the international stage over there, had even said that no, they just reaffirmed their original commitment to 2% of GDP as military spending through 2024.
He wanted to outdo it and say, well, now we're going to do 4.
Yes, because the United States contributes 3.6% of GDP, but that's because, for one, we're the only ones who've ever activated Article 5, which is the alliance after 9/11, and we're the biggest country in the world. I mean, our economy and population is the size of the entirety of Europe, if not more.
Right, and it's sort of weird that the president would say we need to spend all this money on the military, and then, man, we're spending too much on NATO.
Oh, yeah.
Which is where a lot of the military
goes. I mean, the spending has increased by $33 billion.
Right. Now, Courtney did point out just...
about the Queen.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She has also caused the rise and fall of
which is the right of monarchs such as herself, but again, she is the oldest monarch and probably the longest living monarch in human history. You would think that he would have some respect for something like that.
I hope that her and Ruth Bader Ginsburg are hanging out.
Oh my goodness! I'll bet you the Queen is probably talking to Ruth and being like, "Okay, this is what you have to do. I'm going to send over my guys. They're going to hang out and have tea." But I've seen a lot of people comment about Trump and the Queen and how much she appears to have just absolute disdain for him, and how much enjoyment she had when Obama visited her, where Obama stayed overnight at Windsor Palace, I believe.
Did they have a sleepover?
I believe that Obama had a sleepover with the Queen of England.
Okay.
And she genuinely enjoyed his company, whereas it didn't seem like she could get rid of Trump fast enough. And on top of that, we're now living in a world where, and what I mentioned in the beginning, where I think people are starting to come to terms with, even Fox watchers, and that's kind of a cool name for them, Fox watchers, and Trump supporters, not his most loyal ones, but even some of his supporters are starting to realize that he just literally thinks he can get away with saying every single thing that comes out of his mouth as a fact. When he says that he did not disparage Theresa May to The Sun, a newspaper owned by Rupert Murdoch. There's literally a recording of him saying the things he said, and then he backpedals on that, starts lavishing Theresa May with praise, does something that nobody ever thought Trump would do, and apologizes to her, and says, oh, they just took everything out of context, which it's not really an apology, it's a fake apology. But then goes right back after apologizing, which is something he never does, and then says that everything didn't happen, it was fake news. So I don't understand anybody that listens to this man and the words that fall out of his mouth and thinks are true.
In fairness, who are you going to believe? Your ears or the Supreme Leader?
Well, some people, I suppose, have a different view on that. But I think it's becoming to the point where I think Donald Trump is now, I think he's literally addicted to lying, because he can't tell the truth.
I think he's literally a dick.
Yes. He's addicted to lying, and I think that it's almost like a drug to him, because he doesn't drink, but he definitely appears to be someone who does cocaine, as the late Carrie Fisher had pointed out, being an expert. And that it's a possibility, honestly, that he will OD on lies one day, and he will finally get called out. And that's one of those days. It's like, when you're watching, I don't know, like Game of Thrones or something like that, and you see like someone like Baelish finally get his just desserts.
Spoilers!
I didn't say what or when happened. I'm just saying that when somebody that survives a long time and gets away with so much stuff that you don't think anybody should be able to get away with, and they finally get caught, it's very, very, it's a good feeling. Other people who have been caught.
Here's the thing, though. Game of Thrones is a fantasy.
Yeah.
And this is real life. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you know who Sacha Baron Cohen is.
I do. I am watching the shit out of that special. Are we talking
about America? That? Yeah. Who's America? I wanted to mention it because I think it's really hilarious that Roy Moore is now threatening to sue. I think it's Showtime that he's on. Showtime.
Yes.
Showtime. He's threatening to sue Showtime and Sacha Baron Cohen, because he got tricked into an interview where Sacha Baron Cohen's character contacted Roy Moore and said that he had won a pro-Israel award for his support of Israel and had to come to Washington for an interview.
Wasn't that Joe Walsh? Did he also get...
Yes, he got Joe Walsh, Sarah Palin, Roy Moore, and Bernie Sanders, and Dick Cheney. But
Dick Cheney literally signed a waterboard.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious. And you know what? I don't understand how these people didn't recognize him or didn't understand that this was a dupe. But Roy Moore fell for it hard, and he says that he'll sue them for defamation because it's misleading the things that he said. Yeah, because they told the truth. Basically, it's now we're at a point where most conservatives are willing to aggressively come after someone for telling the truth rather than a lie. And that's what's hilarious.
This weird place where there's like this like war on truth as it stands, right? Because think about this: we're in this weird place where we've literally watched a video of the president saying something, or any of these politicians saying something, and then the fact that it's not true, right? Like you have video of them like saying one thing, and then they'll just look you in the face and say, "I didn't say that."
Yeah, I know.
That in itself is a war on truth, and if you don't have baseline metrics of truth, you cannot go anywhere.
Well, I mean, think about it. The war on truth is very similar to things like the war on drugs and the war on poverty, in that they are, and trade wars, in that they are easy to win and always have a positive outcome for the aggressor. I mean, Nikki Haley, our esteemed ambassador to the United Nations, former governor of South Carolina, had said at the United Nations that only 250,000 people, 250,000 people in America live in poverty. That's it. Just 250,000 people live in poverty, despite the fact that nearly 30 million people don't have health insurance. 15 million children do not have access to health care or proper nutrition, and millions more are on welfare, food stamps, live on less than $4 or $5 a day. But people in these golden towers, of which Trump literally lives in, believe that these kind of things don't exist anymore, which goes to the idea of what a truth is, where I believe that Donald Trump and people like him and have surrounded himself with him because they think that they're winning in life, not in general. I mean, they kind of are winning at politics, but they think that the things that they ignore just go away and that they no longer exist, that there's no such thing as poverty because they just say it doesn't exist, because rich people are rich. If there are rich people that are getting richer, then how could anybody be poor in America?
You know, people used to do that with syphilis. It didn't really work out.
Yeah, well, syphilis and what was the other one? Oh, AIDS.
Oh yeah.
You know, I believe that there are even some people who believe that well, it just goes to, if you tell yourself something and ignore a fact or ignore a problem, just like people joke about how men ignore health problems until it's too late. But there are people that believe that you could cure yourself of HIV by having sex with a virgin, which clearly is not true, because people ignore science, they ignore facts, and they ignore things that make them uncomfortable. It's exactly what people like Donald Trump and the people he surrounds himself do. It's exactly why someone like Tom Price, former HHS secretary, Inspector General report found $341,000 in abuse of federal dollars, and yet you get the president, his boss, someone who knew what he was doing and knew what he was capable of, goes around yelling about how American taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook for frivolous expenses like the defense of our alliance, or going after Russians that have hacked the United States and affected our politics. It's the continued level of hypocrisy that also attributes to the way people are able to now just say these things. Even regular people will just repeat something they heard the president say or Hannity say, and treat them as facts. When he says something like, "Oh, the United States pays for 90% of NATO's budget," when we don't pay for anywhere near that amount. But he says, "Oh, I was joking," that you take it out of context, and then his supporters go and repeat that exact same statement. "We pay for 90% of NATO's defense. We shouldn't be doing all that, blah 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 blah." And then you try to tell them, "No, that's not true. That's not a fact." And like, "What do you know? The president said it. It's got to be true. I don't care. The point is that this and that." Just ignoring the actual facts to make yourself feel better, to give yourself a higher ground on which to defend your own morals or your own decisions, or lack thereof. And it's part of the reason why people that voted for Donald Trump will probably continue to vote for Donald Trump in 2020. Will we see that with the midterms coming up? It's very difficult to say, because you've got so many Democrats raising money at levels that they are not known to have done. Where locally, for me, my congressman Josh Gottheimer, who beat one of the most bigoted and racist Republicans, Scott Garrett.
Courtney, do not worry.
Oh, don't
Russian
worry.
indictments are coming.
Don't worry, Court. We got you on that one. But the I'm sorry. What did I just say before?
I don't know. The Russian indictments kind of got
I was surprised by the Russian indictments because they do exist. So Josh Gottheimer, the representative, beat Scott Garrett in the 5th Legislative District, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, has raised $1.5 million this year for his campaign because he took a Republican seat. Republicans targeted him for defeat, but he's raised so much money, he's so popular in the state that they're now trying to focus on these other 2 Republican seats in New Jersey that are up for grabs because of retirements and things like that. And in total, he's raised over $5.5 million, whereas his opponent has only raised $6,000 or $7,000. That's it, literally. His opponent has raised, I believe his name is Steve McCann. Or might be John McCann. John McCann. New Jersey, 5th Legislative District. They were a Republican district held by Scott Garrett for years. They thought that it was a solid Republican district. And then Josh Gottheimer came in, swept it over. He's a great person. He's a people person. He's always walking in parades and talking to people. Right? Scott was not the type of person. He was a bigot. He took money from people that were immoral and went off to run, I believe, the Import-Export Bank, which was something that he'd said he wanted to get rid of because Donald Trump loves putting people in those positions. So I'm just saying right now that the left is raising a lot of money. The right already has all the money, so they're trying to use their money to silence them, to fund primary challengers, to fund campaign ads that are lies, distortions, and stretches of the truth, and making it as difficult as possible for Democrats, for liberals, for progressives to raise money using laws in Republican-held states or court cases like the decision that just took away union funds.
I do think that this is why Ocasio-Cortez is maybe that is the way forward. Although,
it's not a taboo anymore to say a democratic socialist like Cynthia Nixon running for governor of New York, saying
it's also sort of the sort of micro funding, right? Mm-hmm. Like just taking small donations, actually
the Obama method,
making the politics local, right?
And the Bernie method,
yeah. So. But speaking of Obama, I do think we may see a blue wave in November. The problem is we saw a red wave in 2010.
Red tide, I think they call it.
Or red tide in 2010. And Obama still won in 2012.
Well, he won by half as many votes as he had won by before. He'd won by 10 million votes his first time around and 5 million the second time around, which goes to show you that, the people were starting to change, which is why, again, and I've said this a million times, 1,000 seats were flipped from Democrat to Republican across the whole country, local to federal.
But I say that to say it is entirely possible that we could see a blue wave just because people are so pissed off.
Well,
right? There are more angry
but that's
people.
what makes you feel good to say
no,
that.
No.
Looking down at numbers, it's difficult to see.
I'm not saying it to feel good. I'm actually saying it that we should be worried in that Obama won in 2012, and I think Trump could still win in 2020.
I don't doubt that he can win in 2020.
Even if the Democrats take either the House or the Senate. You know what I mean? And I think that's the real
and you're saying it because we have actual experience because it literally happened to Obama.
Right.
And there are White House aides that say all you have to do is tell Trump that Obama did it or didn't want to do it, and Trump will find a way to make the opposite happen.
What I'm also saying is that Obama was much more popular than the Democratic Party.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that Trump's base is there for him as opposed to the Republican Party.
I don't know. I think Republicans learned a little bit of that same lesson about Obama and how popular he was over the party, and are doing their best to coagulate around Trump as a Republican Party, as a GOP. Despite,
you mean unlike how the Democrats shit on Obama after the Obamacare passed?
Oh yeah, once they got what they wanted and saw some backlash, and they lost a lot of seats, and they lost their majority in both houses.
I would argue that they lost. I think we spoke about this before, but I think they lost seats because they shit on Obama. And a lot of people, like when I had no respect for anybody because there were people that didn't want to be seen with Obama in 2010 because they were so scared. What I'm saying is the Republicans now, they'll just double down.
Oh,
right?
they've always done that. People, they're the Roy Moores. You know, they'll double down on everything. You know, Donald Trump himself, a gambling mogul, if you want to call him that, he's absolutely used to wagering what he doesn't have, getting something from when he wins, and when he loses, running away from it, declaring bankruptcy, or finding a way to sue somebody or get out of it some other way. That's exactly what he does as a president. It's exactly what he said he would do if things didn't work out with Kim Jong Un, which they didn't, because they skipped a meeting with the president, with U.S. officials about getting soldier remains back from North Korea to go visit a potato farm. That's what North Korean officials skipped the meeting for. But Trump will come back and say, "Oh, we got all this stuff from them. We got all these concessions. We're going to denuclearize. We're going to de-escalate, and we're going to, find a way to get all of our soldiers back." And now that it doesn't look good for him, it's not in the news. He's not saying anything about it, despite all the coverage and all the hoopla that he made about going to North Korea and how he was going to solve all these problems. The same thing he did with Israel. He didn't solve any problems there. He made things worse, made things harder for people, and gave Kim Jong Un all this respect and credibility that he didn't have before, because not just because of Donald Trump, but because the Americans did it, because he went there representing us, not as Donald Trump, but as the president of the United States. And that's the most important thing about that. The same thing is when he goes to England and insults Theresa May, the prime minister, the host country. When he goes to Germany and says that Germany is captive to Russia because they get so much of their fuel from Russia, which we've known for years. That's why Obama, back during the recession and energy crisis, made a deal with Europe that would not come to fruition until well past his presidency, because Obama was someone who was willing to do things that maybe he wouldn't get the credit for it, but he knew it would be better for people. Like when he told Trump to just change the name of Obamacare, just keep it, don't hurt people. So he signed this deal to build these ports so that we can get all the natural gas that America has been booming with from the shale industry to Europe, so to reduce their dependency on European oil and gas, which they've shut off in Ukraine, in Poland, doubled rates in Central European countries to strangle Europe. That's what Russia does. That's how they play. And now that Russia has their man in the White House, they're doing everything they can to ensure that we do not follow through with our deal with Europe to build all these ports, to send natural gas over to reduce their dependency on Europe, and then goes behind Merkel's back, makes fun of her for it, and accuses her, of all people, he accuses her of being in the Russian pocket when he's about to leave her to go to Helsinki, Finland, to meet with his boy, Vladimir Putin. And I guarantee you he will not be late. He will be on time. He will say nothing but nice things about him, and Putin will just act as Putin does. He's not going to do anything extra. He doesn't have to do anything extra because Trump is trying to seduce him. It's not the other way around. Putin's just going to sit there and let Trump fondle his balls.
No. Here's what I'm afraid of. One, he is going to go there, right? And the only people that are going to be in that room are translators, right? But the translators in Russia are going to be like basically spies, right? Trump is gonna, I don't know who's gonna be in the room with Trump, but there's no one to record what's said, and I'm afraid Trump's just gonna give away like state secrets.
Oh, and just talk about them randomly, so look how cool I am.
And
hey Putin, you want to know the codes to the missiles?
Putin will just sit back and like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Obama sucks, doesn't he? Yeah. Keep talking.
God, this guy. I just
and again.
I bet he calls him Pootie.
To be clear, though, like, fuck Theresa May, right?
I'm sure he tried.
But you go and you essentially shit talk Merkel, which is his classic deflect, right? It was like, I'm not the puppet, you're the puppet.
I'm not a towel, you're a towel.
Right. So basically, he knows that he's in the pocket of Russia, so he's gonna say that Merkel is in the pocket of Russia, right? And then the whole thing, I told her how to do the Brexit deal. No, you didn't. You didn't know how to do anything. I'll leave that to her to say.
Yeah, and then he's like, whatever she says, I'm fine with. Yeah, because he's saying that the deal would threaten the ability for a free trade agreement with the UK.
But again, the problem there is that them exiting the European Union was so they could freely trade or more freely trade with the U.S.
Well, with the U.S. and with China and India not having to go through EU.
But if they and Trump says, well, now we're not going to be able to get a deal done.
Well, at the same time, he's
That
talking about
ruins
Theresa
the
May. He's saying that
whole
Boris
thing.
Johnson would make a good prime minister, the
opponent.
person that just resigned from her cabinet, that
also
is the architect
looks
of the Brexit.
Also looks like Trump.
Oh, very much so. He is the British Trump.
So, my point is, you are sort of shitting all over our closest allies and cradling the balls of our frenemies. I don't even know if you can call it
honestly, I think it reminds me so much of the deal that Hitler made with Stalin to divide up Eastern Europe amongst the two of them, saying, oh, don't worry, we won't attack you. We're the biggest dogs in the field. Let's just take everything, divide it in half. And Stalin, being the most untrusting people in the entire world, who had 50 million people killed because he thought that they were all trying to get at him, and he believed Hitler hook, line, and sinker, trusted him completely. Russia had no warning or defense set up or ready to go for the German invasion, which still failed because you don't invade Russia in winter. I think that's why Trump is going in the summer to Helsinki. And the only people that I think actually ever even beat the Russians in winter were the Finns, because, I mean, you can't get much more winter than Finland. So that in and of itself, I mean, you go in there and you think that Donald Trump is one of these people who clearly doesn't pay attention to history or facts or culture or any of that kind of stuff. He's going to go in there. I'm the business guy. I'm going to tell you what's what. If I don't like it, I'm just going to walk away because he thinks he can. And there's no point to this summit. There's no reason to meet with Vladimir Putin right now. There's no reason to do it right after meeting with our NATO allies, an organization established to counter the effects of the Soviet Union and the Russian Empire, which it still technically is. And going off of what your fears are about a room with just them and some translators and the things you might give away, I have the fear that he'll be in this room and say things like, if you're going to invade Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania or whatever, I don't care. Just find a way to do it so it doesn't look like you're actually invading them, like topple their governments, do whatever, and we won't step in.
Here's an interesting point that was brought up this week. So Trump is going to come out of that meeting and say say something happened, right? He's going to discuss what they talked about. What happens when Vladimir Putin says, well, you know what? No, it went this way.
Probably. I mean,
and we didn't agree to
that's exactly what Emmanuel Macron did after the NATO meeting. He's like, we didn't say any of that stuff. Trump, he just...
No.
These are agreements that Obama got with us.
But again, what happens when the American people... Like, who do you believe? Vladimir... It's one thing to say I believe Macron. But when we say we believe Vladimir Putin over Trump, and where are we when we have to, even consider that decision, and that I think most people's money would be on Putin.
Well, he would certainly win in a fight. I mean, that's...
Forget about the fight, though. I'm saying...
He's ridden a bear.
The word of the Russian president versus the United States president. Like, whose word do you take? Okay, but
so what if it's a Russian or American or Ethiopian or Belarusian? It doesn't matter. The fact is that as much as Vladimir Putin is a dictator, and he might not be on the level of like Duterte or Un, but he still composes himself as a world leader. He still walks about as if he recognizes not only that he's the president of Russia, a superpower technically, a nuclear power, but he also, at least in public dealings, gives the air of a person who has some kind of respect, some kind of morality, whether it's in one direction or another, it doesn't matter. He is not an embarrassing person to his country. He might be a dictator, he might be someone who does horrible, horrible things and has spies and people killed in other countries with nerve agents, hacks elections in other countries, but at least he composes himself well. And that might not be saying much, but every single thing that Donald Trump does is embarrassing to this country, in my opinion, and makes us look foolish and warmongery. And while some of the things that he has done that I have talked about in previous episodes may be somewhat beneficial, I think that overall the cons outweigh the pros of this presidency. And I think back to how I felt when George Bush was president, how I just complained about all the things he was doing, but they weren't the worst things in the world. And I remember we just suffered terrorist attacks and stuff like that. I don't feel this way at all about Donald Trump. I don't think that he's just a hapless idiot running around with power, where Dick Cheney pulling all the strings. I mean, some people think that Mike Pence is kind of like a shadow president or whatever because Trump clearly is not the type to govern very well. But I believe that there's an actual malice in the actions that Donald Trump takes. I believe that there's actual hatred, bigotry, ignorance behind him. Whereas, with someone like George Bush, you just kind of felt like, he really just, he's kind of special. Like, yeah, he's the president. Just give him his pudding.
There are certain
give him his pudding. Sit him down with a red button, and he's fine.
Rose-colored glasses that go into Bush now, right? People would
Rose
love
bushes?
to have Bush back. By the way, Courtney says he believes the new prime minister of Ethiopia.
With the deal with Eritrea?
Yeah, he says he is making revolutionary changes right now, creating an atmosphere of peace in East Africa.
Yeah, after 22 years, I think, of war between the two of them, and nobody's talking about giving them a Nobel Prize. Nobody, because it's happening in Africa. But Donald Trump walks into a meeting with Kim Jong-un, walks out with nothing, and 40 Republicans want to give him a prize and say he's the greatest leader we've ever had. And then he goes around saying, I've got higher poll numbers than Abraham Lincoln, despite the fact that polls weren't invented until like 70 years after Lincoln died.
Also, it's sort of an interesting thing, and so there's a guy named Baratunde Thurston. Look him up on Twitter. He's an interesting guy. But right after the 2016 election, like on November 9th, he did a show, and he said the thing he feared the most is the willingness of leaders, or sort of representatives, I should say, to bend to power. Right? And so look at the Strzok sort of interrogation.
Isn't that what Neville Chamberlain went through with the appeasement of Hitler?
Sure, but my point is, we have, like, these are our representatives, right? These are not like just Trump stands. These are like people who hold elected office, right? And it really felt like an inquisition when you were watching this Strzok hearing. And just sort of the idea of presuming someone guilty before anything. Like, they didn't go in there to ask questions. They didn't let him talk. They just used this.
Well, he did get to talk. Strzok got to talk.
Yeah, but I mean, the way they cut him off and didn't really want the answers. They didn't care about the answers. They had scripts that they wanted to read before he came in. And I say all that to say is they need to discredit him so that they could discredit Rosenstein, so that whatever Mueller comes back with, they can discredit that. And they should not. I get that the president is a Republican, but they should be on the side of law.
I mean, when did conservatives? When did they first start saying things like, there's political bias. There's political bias in the FBI and the Department of Justice against Donald Trump, but never once did they think that if there's political bias against Donald Trump and before he was elected president, is there a possibility there was any kind of political bias against someone like Hillary Clinton, which there clearly was. There was a huge animus against her within the FBI, within the Department of Justice, within local municipalities in New York, where Donald Trump is headquartered. There were people like Strzok who said in his deposition or in this interview or whatever you want to call it, that he was aware in June of 2016 that the FBI was investigating Donald Trump and his campaign for collusion with Russia, but did not say anything, even though he knew if he had said something, it could have crushed his campaign early. He said nothing. He said nothing in my personal life has ever affected the work that I do, because he was having an affair with Lisa Page, who was his coworker at the FBI. Their boss, I assume, investigated that relationship, which I can only imagine is not permitted inter-office relationships, and the fact that he's married, and discovered these text messages, was obligated to reveal them. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was propositioned to reveal them. Maybe he got something out of it, which just showed that there was a bias against Donald Trump, in that these two people who were having a secret affair, talking to each other, and thought that their conversation was private. This conversation about how they don't like Donald Trump and how they're going to stop him, blah, 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 which did not happen. They did not stop him. They didn't release any damning information.
And again, I just want to point out, these are the same people that said the Donald Trump Jr. Russian meeting was okay because nothing happened.
Exactly. And these are the same people who are taking out of context these simple text messages.
Who also do not want to release the full transcript of the off-camera
Exactly.
interview.
Nor do they want to say that something like grab them by the pussy on a recorded audio was taken out of context. I know you took that out of context. It's just locker room talk. It's just locker room talk. They're willing to see these kind of things as being totally okay to say and that there's exceptions and we should understand, but not see that conversation between two people having a secret affair at the FBI during a contentious political time, people who are allowed to have their own political beliefs and did not affect the election. Somehow that is the biggest crime here, and the FBI is completely, all 12 indictments that just got handed down from Russia, the fact that Roger Stone is probably this American of interest who set up the meetings,
he is.
that Paul Manafort has now been transferred to another jail because he was bragging about how nice his other one was. He's got 5 guilty pleas. He's got dozens of indictments, scores of them, against Russians, against hackers, against people. There's hundreds of pages of documents proving irrefutably that the Russians were involved in this election, and all you get from Donald Trump and Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes are things that it's fake, it didn't happen, none of it's real, wrap it up, let's get it gone, everybody stop paying attention to this.
The man who ran the Benghazi investigation.
Yes, the person who spent 3 years investigating, got 0 indictments, 0 guilty pleas, who grilled Hillary Clinton for, 12 hours?
Also, the man who hates Hillary Clinton and is politically motivated.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a bias to me, right? The DOJ released a report either today or yesterday that showed that on the same day, July 27th, 2016, the same day that Donald Trump is at a rally and says to the camera, maybe the Russians can find those 30,000 missing emails. Maybe they'll be rewarded, pause, by our media, of course, probably, maybe not, blah, blah, blah. And he goes off on a little tangent. But very explicitly, that little wink to the camera, hey, if you're listening, do something about it. And the DOJ report
By the way,
shows...
that's not hyperbole. That's literally what he said.
Literally what he said. And the DOJ report shows that within hours of that rally, of him saying that to the camera, within hours, the DNC server for Hillary Clinton was attempted hacking by a spearfisher, which is where you just send out an email and hope that they respond to it and you can get in. And 76 other emails attached to the domain for Hillary Clinton's campaign. They got their poll numbers. They got their strategies in all the different states and counties. They got all this information from them, wanted to give it to Donald Trump, wanted to leak it to WikiLeaks, get all this stuff out there. And somehow there's nothing wrong with that to conservatives. But there's everything wrong with all the actual truth and facts and evidence that have been discovered that prove that Donald Trump is basically an illegitimate president.
Also, ironic, or I should say,
ironic.
If you look at the new report, it kind of highlights that out of every place they tried to attack, Clinton's private email server was the most secure.
So that was the most impregnable. Her private email server that they came after her on Benghazi for, and for all this other stuff, was the only one that they couldn't hack. So I mean that fact alone should just be spewed about. But the emails, I know. The biggest underlying thing here, and what almost anybody that really knows things in politics and stuff would say about things like this, is that campaign finance and things like Citizens United are the main and real cause of our political strife. That the people with massive resources that no one could possibly comprehend in our class are allowed to spend freely and have more speech than us because they have more money than us. Money that is generated by the Federal Reserve, that's not even really current, it's not even really real. 40% of all money donated since Citizens United to super PACs has been secret, where we cannot find the donors, they don't reveal the donors, they don't have to be revealed. The campaigns don't work directly with them, but they can support whoever they want. They can say whatever they want about any candidate, and it's almost impossible to find out who they are. 25% of all of the money given to these super PACs and spent on campaigns in congressional races this past year, this midterm season, 25% come from 3 Coke-related, or maybe 4 Coke-related industries and groups. Americans for Prosperity and stuff like that.
I thought you meant cocaine. Sorry.
No, Coke Industries, the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
25% of all of them come from 3 groups. 80% 80% of all the money donated to these super PACs is virtually untraceable. 80% of all the money spent on this midterm congressional race was spent by conservative-leaning groups. This is one of the most damning facts that show that our democracy, while it could survive, it is not stable in its current form and is easily going to be undermined. And unless the next nominee for president from the Democratic Party is someone who aggressively believes in campaign finance reform and aggressively pursues corruption, then I believe it's going to be easy to say that America is lost, that it is no longer a democracy. There's plenty of people who say we're an oligarchy now.
You were hugging the Constitution.
I do. No, I do. That's why I say that we will survive. It's just not stable.
Strong as the people who are defending it.
Exactly, but I mean, you have countries all over the world with dictators: Turkey, Philippines, Russia, China. All over Africa, Zimbabwe, and all over South America. There's all these dictators, all these authoritarian regimes where the people protest in the streets and then they get killed by security forces and they keep protesting, blah, blah, blah. But more or less, it keeps happening and they keep just rewriting their constitutions because people, for the most part, are just used to it historically being in a country where an authoritarian ruler can be. America has never been that country. The people here are more resistant. They are less susceptible to the fascist propaganda that is pumping out of the Trump administration through Fox News, through the White House, through the press secretary on a daily basis. Some of it will stick. The tactics of lies and deceits and distortion that are used by dictators all over the world are the same ones that Donald Trump is copying and using on the American public. Will we be able to survive 8 years of that? I don't know. 4 years? Yes, I think we can survive 4 years. I do not believe we can survive.
I think the genie's out of the bottle.
I think 8 years is probably enough to convince America we need a king.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that you go back from this.
No, that's why they're calling him the wrecking ball president.
Listen, and look, I said it before. Trump is a weapon of mass destruction.
He really is.
And to quote Loki from the first Avengers movie, people want to be led.
Yeah. Listen, he purged enough people from his administration since he was elected that he now has all these layers of protection against lawsuits and inquiry because now all the people who could possibly have done anything or been linked or known anything ahead of time are gone, basically. The only ones that are really still around, Jeff Sessions, Betsy DeVos, Steve Mnuchin. I mean, that's pretty much it.
Rick Perry's flying under the radar.
Rick Perry, well, he's just chilling. Him and Ben Carson. I mean, Ben Carson, people that try to vote as a legal immigrant should lose their citizenship status. So, this is a man who literally talks words, but has no idea what they mean.
Word-shaped air.
Word-shaped air, exactly. I love that. But he has purged so many people from the government that it's almost impossible to say that that the government, the train that we seem to be on, can actually be changed. I mean, getting rid.
But what I'm saying is, why would it? Right? This works.
He got rid of Scott Pruitt. He'll just be replaced by someone even worse.
No, but it's not that. Why tell the truth again? You don't have to.
No. I mean, that's exactly, you fight China, you put all these tariffs on things, you say Chinese are hurting us, they're dumping all this stuff, and yet every Trump product from Ivanka to Donald is made in China and exempted from these taxes and tariffs.
Of course they are.
Which I think that's a direct corruption and emolument violation.
Or the fact that Trump is going to build, or he doesn't build anything, but you know what I mean. Yeah, he's going to put up buildings.
Files bankruptcies
in some of these places. If any deal works out with North Korea, he's going to want to put up buildings there.
I honestly no,
he
definitely.
He talked about the coast.
Listen,
there.
while I was in Hawaii, there's an area of Hawaii, the Valley of the Kings or whatever. It's a pristine area of the island of Oahu that kings and old chiefs for thousands of years have been buried in these mountains. Their bodies were brought up there by a servant who then threw himself off the side of the mountain so that no one would ever know where these bodies are. Donald Trump tried to buy this land, these mountains in this land, from the people who are protecting it, I guess, for millions and millions of dollars because he wanted to build hotels all over it. I mean, he's the kind of person that has no respect for anything but himself, only sees dollar signs and buildings. And then when he gets them built, they're shoddy condition. They're sued by all the contractors that built it. He files bankruptcies. He collects money from all the investors and then runs away.
But
it's exactly what he does with his campaign money.
Now, indictments.
Yes. 12 indictments against a lot of Russians. I think it's kind of funny. Someone posted.
And one unnamed American.
Yeah, probably Roger Stone. He's admitted.
Not probably.
Well, he said yes. So I thought it was really funny that someone had posted a copy of the front page of the indictment, marked July 13th or whatever, 2008. And
or
2018.
Friday the 13th. This all came out.
Oh, how about that? All the people that were listed had a lot of them had the last name something Vich, Vich.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really funny. He's like, it wasn't a witch hunt, it was a vitch hunt. Right? So now we've got even more, a dozen indictments but right before Trump goes to meet with Putin in Helsinki. I think Mueller is a shrewd strategist. I enjoy his timing for releasing some of these charges, which are totally by the book, and are indictments that are sealed or that are unsealed, public, that we now know that these are true for the most part, and that if we could ever actually get these people to probably be tried in absentia, that these people hacked and worked against the United States, and the president and the administration and his Republican lackeys will not do anything to combat it. He's willing to build a wall between us and Mexico, but not a cyber wall between us and actual criminals crossing the American border to harm us. I got a message from Courtney. The thing I love most about this is that Trump launches attacks against the probe, constantly knowing full well Mueller can't respond and defend the investigation. But the beautiful thing is,
he speaks so loudly with his indictments.
The beautiful thing is Mueller can respond with actions and the indictments. Exactly true. It's basically what I'm trying to say is that yes, maybe Mueller can't respond tit for tat with the Twitter president, but he can certainly show Trump that he is still around, that he can't possibly issue enough pardons to protect all these people and save himself the 2020 seat. So, and on top of that, Donald Trump goes to Helsinki knowing that he is not implementing the Russian sanctions for the annexation of Crimea, that he's going to go there and be like, oh, I'm just going to ask him if he hacked the elections, and that's it. And that's how he's going to hold him accountable.
He's probably going to say no, so what's the point of even asking?
But, people like John McCain saying he should just cancel the meeting if he's not going to actually hold him accountable, whereas a unanimous Congress approved a symbolic resolution basically reaffirming our alliance with NATO, and the sanctions on Russia were passed nearly unanimously as well. Donald Trump does not care about democracy. He doesn't care about what Congress says or does unless they do what he says and does. And that's exactly where we are right now, where he's about to go to Russia and tell them whatever daddy asks, I guess, and worry all of our allies and neighbors, all 28 other countries that form around us and look to us for leadership. No one's looking to us for leadership anymore.
So Courtney says even if they aren't extradited, which Putin will not give them back.
Funny comment. I enjoy this comment about that we can freeze their accounts, because Republicans,
you can freeze their foreign accounts.
Yeah,
you can't
and any assets they have in America, you can't touch. But you can also work with other countries to make it very difficult for them to get their money out of Russia, that's the hard part. I mean, that's the part that's hard on them. But one of the things that Republicans got on Barack Obama for a long time ago, now it seems, was the $400 million shipment of cash to Iran. And everybody got on, like, can't believe you did that. You paid bribe and extortion, all this other stuff. When this was money that we owed them from having frozen their accounts in the 70s after the Islamic Revolution. And part of the Iran nuclear deal was that you're going to stop all this stuff and stop the nuclear enrichment, and we're going to unfreeze those accounts, all that money, and give it back to you. So we can't make money transfers because there's banking sanctions on Iran. So we can't send them a check. You can't put it on a credit card. You can't buy anything from them. The only thing you can do to give them back their money is to literally give them back their money. So what would happen if we did something like that, where Congress with a veto-proof majority put sanctions on Russia that would freeze all these accounts and whatnot and hold all this kind of money? How long do you hold it for? Is that even aggressive enough? Or do Republicans say that this is money that we're just going to keep, that we're going to collect it, just like police seize assets from drug dealers, that as much as they can take your house and your car? It doesn't matter what we're going to do if we're not going to go far enough to actually harm them, or to tell Vladimir Putin he's not in charge anymore.
Here's the thing. This is not about them, right? They're saying it's like a name and shame thing. I don't think so. I think that this was released when it was released for a reason, right? I think that knowing that Trump was on his way to Helsinki, you released this to see what Trump will say.
Oh yeah.
Now,
what reaction are you going
right?
to get, and then base.
And then that is something that will be material. Because he can't say, it's fake news, right?
Robert Mueller was a soldier,
right?
And he was a prosecutor for a long time. Worked in the FBI for a long time. He knows what he's doing. Donald Trump is a wild animal. They call him a sex monster in Germany, and sex pest in England.
This is Mueller is tightening the screws, and essentially just think of him as a shark that is circling around the concept of collusion.
The chum that is Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, it's all part of it.
Well, one of the biggest issues that I think a lot of Democrats are going to try to make going into the midterms is his pick of Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court may very well likely hear the arguments and the grounds for a constitutional challenge as to whether or not Robert Mueller can indict a sitting president, or whether a sitting president can be charged with things, even though some similar cases have been handled. Donald Trump is going to be able to pick the judge that gets to decide if Donald Trump is guilty or innocent of things like this.
If you can't indict a sitting president,
Republicans love gerrymandering.
Why not?
He's gerrymandered the court.
He has. But why not just wait until 2020 or 2024, because he may win again. And just as soon as he's walking out, he gets his nice helicopter shot. And then Mueller's waiting there with cuffs.
I would love that so much. My heart would probably, wow. I mean, that's a mind blow, because that'd be the most amazing.
Like the farewell shot that Obama got.
Yeah, I think that would be the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. But he's got a lot of power and connections and money. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually owned some of these detention facilities that are being used to house ICE detained immigrants, which is now a billion-dollar industry, by the way, detaining children and immigrants. That's why it's not easy to deport them, and that's why it's not easy to stop them, because there's a lot of money in getting them here and then imprisoning them. If Jeff Sessions can own private prison, why doesn't Trump Industry, which he did not divest from?
Jeff Sessions, who owns stock in private prisons and wants to increase
prison populations.
Yes.
At the same time, Hudson County in New Jersey signed a deal recently that they have an 800-bed facility, and ICE will be paying them $120 per inmate per day for the county to house them. Most of the immigrants are from New York that are being detained, and these are people that illegal citizens, whatever you want to call them, undocumented people that have been detained by immigration, and they are paying Hudson County, New Jersey. If you think about all the other counties that there are and all the other prisons and the bigger ones, $120 a day, which is $10 more than they normally pay per day. We're talking. Imagine if we were to take that money and give people that are poor, give veterans, give underprivileged people that live in urban communities $120 a day, just as a stipend, so that they would get off the streets or go do something with their lives or feed their families or something. That would be there would be a riot on the conservative right. There would be an absolute riot. They'd probably actually start the next civil war if we were to try and do something. But they have no problem spending $120 a day to house and detain people that they're just going to throw out of the country. They could easily be deported, but there's not enough immigration judges, and there's not enough aid for the people that they're coming after. Now there's children that are being forced to stand trial by themselves and expected to understand how the legal system works when they can barely understand how their own toes work.
Fantastic. I think that's all we got for today, sir.
It's looking like it. I'm very surprised that these kind of conversations that we're having aren't happening more often, because we live in a world where everything is all about the shock factor. Every headline that you see on like Fox News or whatever like this is Trump slams this and this gets slammed by that, and everything's a slam or breaking news.
Well, here's the thing. That's all about.
We need a show for you called Here's the Thing, even though NPR already has one, but gotta do something like that. It's just amazing that these kind of conversations aren't happening.
I think
in the larger public sphere.
Yeah.
That's what most upsets me. That's what most upsets me. Is that. So yeah, I crossed off everything on my paper. Anything that we didn't talk about you want to
No, that's it.
Courtney, we really appreciate you participating in the conversation today. Sorry to everybody.
Keep bringing us the Ethiopian facts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry again to everybody who was trying to tune in around noon. We were updating our computer system. And like Steve said in the beginning, for anybody that didn't catch it, we will now be simultaneously streaming on Facebook and YouTube starting next weekend.
No, starting this weekend.
Well, this weekend right now, but nobody that's watching now could possibly have found the YouTube link so quickly. Nor would they be streaming Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So,
unless they were following us, they should
there you
subscribe.
Go. Follow and subscribe to the RSquared Network. You'll get all the notifications. Everybody is welcome to participate in the conversation even after we finish recording. You can message us and we'll try to address it during the next show. But we're bigger and better things. We're only getting more and more involved. So please be a part of the conversation. Be a part of the democracy that we live in, and comment and talk to us, and maybe send Steve a new hat because he loves new hats.
And tell them where they can find you.
You can find me at Joseph So Swald at the Twitters.
Okay.
Twitter, whatever. At the bottom of the screen. Or if you happen to be in the Missouri area code, you can look up St. Louis and Dubs and find me there. What about you, Steve? How about you? Are they going to find you anywhere else in the world? In the ether?
On Mondays, you can find me on The Real. We've moved the shows to Mondays prime time.
Prime time Monday?
Prime time,
what?
Yeah, around sometime between
Saturday afternoon just got sour.
Yeah.
Sour Saturdays.
We're going to be talking about a little second pagey stuff where the DOJ wants to move to block the AT&T Time Warner deal.
That after they let the time frame for them to actually step in, because they're appealing.
You know what
it's
I think?
It's an appeal. They waited.
I think that they saw that conversation that Mr. Stanky, that's really his name. He's the new guy that heads up Time Warner. He's an AT&T exec.
You have to be rich for a name like that.
HBO that they're going to need to make more money and basically become Netflix. Quantity over quality. Anyways,
$68 billion in cash, I believe, is what I read last.
No, 85. Yeah.
Who just has that cash lying around?
You know? But anyways,
the American government has $115 billion in cash on hand. That's it.
Yeah, Apple has more. Okay, so you can find me on your favorite social media network as long
Snapchat?
As it's not Snapchat.
Damn.
And 36 Chambers of Fatherhood, and on YouTube now, and on Facebook. So like us, share us, tell your friends about us. Drugs, not drugs.
But sometimes drugs are okay.